the Bible's book of Genesis. In chapter 6, verse 9, begins the story of Noah and the flood, in which God sends a great deluge to rid the earth of sinners and start anew. Different versions of this same story exist in nearly every ancient tradition around the world.
Going back 5,000 years, we have sacred texts that tell us there was an antediluvian civilization. There was a great flood and that there were survivors. The Mesopotamians speak of this in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Egyptians speak of this in the Edfu creation text. Plato learned from the Egyptians that there was once a civilization called Atlantis that existed 9,000 years before his time.
Plato wrote about the lost continent of Atlantis in 2 of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, around 360 BC. Historians and researchers have long debated whether this pre-flood civilization was purely mythological or actually existed. Arguments have been made suggesting remnants of Plato's destroyed civilization could be found at the South Pole.
I think what happened in Antarctica was that approximately 13,000 years ago, that flourishing civilization that originally came from space and establishing its presence in Antarctica was flash frozen. We actually have ancient evidence of this in the form of Plato's dialogues, where he talks about the last days of Atlantis. That basically is informing us that Atlantis was an extraterrestrial colony that had established itself on Earth, and that after a pole shift, Atlantis was moved under the ice where the South Pole currently is.
As more and more pieces of the puzzle start to come together, might we soon be able to solve the mystery of the Antarctic continent? And if so, just what might we discover?
Modern whistleblowers still argue that there is more about Antarctica that is being covered up than we think. There are entire bases down there, entire civilizations, that the world's governments are working with aliens.
They know about the buried artifacts, they know about the ancient civilizations down there, and they know about the extraterrestrial civilizations that continue to operate in Antarctica at the very moment.
It's totally possible that Antarctica contains an extraterrestrial home base on Earth. It's a totally isolated part of the planet. It's completely uninhabited, or was until recently. It's ideal.
Atlantis is a lost island civilization that was originally discussed by Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias around 360 BC. Plato was writing about events that took place 9,000 years before his time. He tells us that Atlantis was governed by laws that were inscribed on a pillar that was housed in the Temple of Poseidon in the center of Atlantis. This pillar was made of a mysterious Atlantean substance called orichalcum, which means of unknown origin.
It was said that the Temple of Poseidon flashed with the red light of orichalcum. The copper tint of this metal caught the attention of the seekers that came to this sacred place. This has spiritual implications. There was something about this metal that was said to resonate with the divine.
2015, marine archaeologists off the coast of Sicily discovered a shipwreck. And preserved in the shipwreck were metal ingots, 39 of them, which the marine archaeologists told the world were orichalcum.
This raised the question of, is it possible that Plato's story is actual historical fact? And what was discovered here in this shipwreck is evidence of Plato's story.
Now, orichalcum is 80% copper and 20% zinc. What's interesting about this is that zinc doesn't naturally occur. Zinc only occurs in nature as sphalerite. It's a zinc-sulfur complex. In order to create zinc, you have to actually process the zinc out of this sulfide. They didn't have that technology back then.
Plato does not tell us anything about how orichalcum was mined or how it was manufactured. He only says that it was of unknown origin. However, given its connection with Poseidon and the gods, we can reasonably speculate that it was the gods themselves who taught the Atlanteans how to utilize this very powerful substance.
Those who could smelt metals, who could work with metals, this was considered to be a gift from the divine realm. This was considered to be something that humans didn't naturally do, and was something that had to be from the gods.
According to the ancient astronaut theory, our ancestors were taught in various scientific disciplines. They were taught the process of metallurgy by extraterrestrials. They taught them how to work metal with primitive means, just to get started with ultimately turning ourselves into the super civilization that we are today.
Athens, Greece, the 4th century BC. In his famous dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, the Greek philosopher Plato writes about a lost continent that existed 9,000 years before his time and was home to a highly advanced civilization. Called Atlantis, it was founded by the Greek god Poseidon, and the inhabitants possessed sophisticated technology. But Atlantis was ultimately destroyed by a terrible cataclysm. And according to some researchers, the story of its destruction is strikingly similar to Native American traditions detailing the end of the Third World.
The Hopi and other Pueblo Indians tell us that their devastating cataclysm was due to human greed and wandering away from the spiritual truths of our Creator. What's interesting about this is that this idea is echoed in Plato's story of the destruction of Atlantis. The Atlanteans were also created by gods. As soon as humanity wandered off into materialism, that's when Atlantis was destroyed by water. A perfect correspondence with what the Hopi said happened at the end of the Third World.
Could there be a connection between the ancient Greek tale of Atlantis and Native American origin stories? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest another story told by early Native Americans bears striking similarities to Atlantis, the legend of the lost city of Aslan, which appears in the traditions of the Aztecs and numerous Native American groups throughout the Southwest.
It's considered the birthplace of civilization, based on the Mexica codices and the oral history of the Mojaves, of the Hopis. So we have all these oral history also that allude to the origin of Aslan.
There's debate among scholars as to exactly what Aslan looked like. And we know that the Aztecs say that their capital of Tenochtitlan was made in the image of Aslan. And from that capital, we get a backwards projection that their origin place is an island surrounded by water. They actually built Tenochtitlan up into the lake and put causeways out so that it looks very much like Atlantis.
According to the Aztecs, the god Huitzilopochtli was the founder of Tenochtitlan, which, as far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, provides yet another intriguing connection to Plato's description of Atlantis.
Tenochtitlan was a place made artificially. Compare it to Atlantis. In both cases, a god was the ruler of it. In Atlantis, we have Poseidon. Now, Poseidon was an extraterrestrial. Not everyone should have access to Atlantis. The same thing in Aztlan or Tenochtitlan. They wanted to be separated. They had a certain technology there, which was a hidden technology, and it was not for the general public. Says the same thing.
The fact that we have stories that are not just similar but identical leads me to think that perhaps These ancient cultures were visited by the same extraterrestrials.
While mainstream academics consider the stories of these lost civilizations and their destruction to be mythological, the recent discovery of vast sunken landmasses such as Doggerland, located just east of the British Isles in 2012, and Zealandia, found near New Zealand in 2017, may offer proof that a catastrophic water event did, in fact, change the face of the Earth.
So here we have authentic legends of lost lands that were destroyed in cataclysms. Mainstream historians, still pretty much reject this, feel that it's all myths. But it would seem, really, that all kinds of civilizations could have come and gone on our planet. We know that there are over 200 known submerged cities in the Mediterranean. There's just so much on our planet that we have yet to find out.
In the Native American indigenous teaching, there are cycles of destruction and rebirth. The interesting part is that this is parallel to other great world teachings. In the story of Noah, the sons of God came down to earth and they were teaching the humans evil ways, and God decided to intervene and brought this great flood. In the story of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian legend, the Council of Gods brought the flood. The Inca god Viracocha created the Great Flood.
So all of these traditions correspond directly with the Hopi Four Worlds tradition about previous civilizations destroyed by the gods. The story is always the same. This speaks to the idea of extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs.
I believe there are ancient civilizations that some people refuse to write about. But ancient civilizations are coming to surface because the time has come to tell the truth about human origin.
Could it be that Native American stories of star people and of lost civilizations so closely resembles other ancient traditions from around the globe because they all encountered the same otherworldly visitors? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest the Native Americans' knowledge of star people comes not only from the distant past, but from the extraterrestrial activity that occurs over native lands, even today. Andros Island, the Bahamas, 2003. Members of the Association for Research and Enlightenment conduct aerial searches for underwater structures that might reveal evidence of a lost civilization.
Off of the coast of Andros, they discovered an incredible platform of rectangular and square stones that stretched for several hundred yards, and all the indications are that it goes back to the end of the last ice age and is probably around 11 to 12,000 years old.
The search is part of a long-term project working in conjunction with the Casey Foundation. Their quest is to locate remnants of the lost continent of Atlantis, which healer and psychic Edgar Casey said would be located in the area.
Edgar Casey is arguably America's greatest psychic. He was born in 1877, died in 1945, and he has documented over 14,000 psychic readings. What's interesting is that Casey also got into things like reincarnation. Some of Casey's clients were told that they had lifetimes in the so-called mythical civilization of Atlantis. In fact, Casey's readings said that the people of Atlantis as a whole had mass reincarnated as the people of America, and that America was, in a sense, a future life carryover of Atlantis.
Casey revealed in his psychic readings that the truth about the nature of this lost civilization exists in a hidden hall of records at 3 locations across the globe. In Egypt, near the Sphinx, underwater in the Bahamas, and in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Any 3 of these areas apparently would have all of the records that we would need to completely rebuild our history and understand how there may have been much more widespread extraterrestrial presence here on Earth.
Could recent archaeological finds in the Bahamas confirm that Edgar Cayce was right about the existence of a lost extraterrestrial civilization? And if so, should we be concerned about his predictions for the future of humanity?
Cayce was a cataclysmist, and in his readings, he was constantly talking about Earth changes and pole shifts that caused civilizations to be destroyed in ancient times. And Cayce said that we were going to have another pole shift around the time of the millennium.
Even a relatively small asteroid coming in at the right angle, not necessarily hitting Earth, but sort of grazing the Earth, could theoretically change the tilt axis of the Earth significantly. Now, if that occurred, land and ocean would redistribute on the Earth.
It seems as if history repeats itself. And it may be that at this moment, we are exactly in the same situation that the citizens of Atlantis were in.
Perhaps we will find out exactly what had happened to this lost civilization and learn from their mistakes and not sink into oblivion ourselves.
The more we uncover, it will all point in one direction. We are not the first, and we never have been. And extraterrestrial pre-civilization existed before our recorded history. And this truth will be revealed within our lifetime.
Could the stories of a time when gods and other worldly beings inhabited the Earth be more than just mythology? And might the discovery of unexplainable remnants from this lost civilization reveal the truth about our extraterrestrial origins, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest? Perhaps we are on the verge of uncovering the final piece of the puzzle that will change our understanding of Earth's history forever. But will we uncover it before it's too late?